Hello and welcome to the third video of AI Fabric series. In the previous two videos, we saw how different elements of AI Fabric work together, and then also deployed our first ML skill to be used in the UiPath Studio. And the ML skill that we deployed was based on a pre-trained model. And in this video, we'll see how to deploy a trainable ML skill, which is based on a trainable model. So before we go into the AI Fabric, let's just first have a look at the agenda. So as a first step, we'll add a trainable ML package, and this trainable ML package will come from the out-of-the-box packages which is provided by UiPath. Thereafter, we'll define the datasets which would be used to train this ML package. And with this dataset and the ML package, we'll define a pipeline. Thereafter, we'll trigger the pipeline in order to train the model. And once the model is trained, we'll deploy this model as an ML skill so that it could be used in the UiPath Studio. And as a last step, we'll see how to close the loop within the UiPath Studio. And what I mean by closing the loop is, since this is a trainable model, there is an activity within ML skill package in UiPath Studio which could be used to send back data to the AI Fabric, and this data can be used again to retrain the model. So without wasting any time, let's just go into AI Fabric and see how to do that. So I already have my AI Fabric open over here. And like in the previous video, I'll again create a new project and we'll call it out of the box trainable model. And just click on create. So if you go back to the AI Fabric, you will see that there is a new project that has been created. So in the last video, we had already shown you how to deploy a pre-trained model. And this is about deploying a trainable model. So let's just go inside this project. So as a first step, we'll go and add an ML package. And if you see here, there are two options. So one is the upload zip file. So this is for all the packages which are based on custom models. And how to deploy a custom model would be something that I'll be showing in the next video. But for now, we'll use a model which is being provided by UiPath. And under this model, if you go under language analysis, and if we take the first package here, so in the description here, you could see that it is retrainable. And also one more thing to note in the description is that if you see here, it says that this ML package must be retrained, because if it is being deployed without training, then the deployment would fail. So after adding the package, and before we can deploy this package in the orchestrator, we would have to define some data sets in order to train this model. And let's do that. Let's first add this package. So I'll just click on submit and give this package a name. Let's just keep it as it is. I'll call it English text classification and also trainable. Since there's only one package available, that's why you don't get an option to choose here. And the descriptions are already being filled out. So let's just click on submit. And with this, one package has been added. So now the next step is, in order to train this ML package, we need to define some datasets. And as far as datasets is concerned, I will be using the datasets which is available in the training for AI Fabric in UiPath Academy. So I've already downloaded this data, and I'll just go directly to datasets and create a new folder. So we'll give this dataset a name and call it train or training data, whatever you want to call it. Click on create, and at this point it will ask you to upload all the files which are related to training data. So I will just click on upload files. So this is something that I've downloaded from the UiPath Academy's training. Upload, and similarly we can upload the test data. So if you already don't know what is the difference between a train and a test data, so I've already explained it in my first video. So just click on the link above to understand the use cases of why do we need a training and a test data. So as a next step, I'll go back to my datasets and create a new folder and call this folder as test data. And similarly upload the test file. So now if you go back to datasets, you would see that two datasets have been created. First is the trained data, which would be used to train our model. and after the model has been trained, we will use the test data to see how good the model has been trained. So before we move on, I would also want to show you what is there inside this train and the test data. So if we just open our train CSV file here, you would see that there are two columns. The first one is the input and the second one is the target. And the input is nothing but it's a text. And this text has a target value, or it has been labeled as positive or negative, depending on the sentiment behind this text. And so this data would be used in order to train the model. And once this model has been trained, then the test.csv file would be used. So let's go and have a look at that. So if you see the test and the train data, they're both similar as far as the schema is concerned. The only difference is in how they are being used. So the train data is used in order to train the model, whereas the test data is used to test the model. So when I say testing, what would happen is this data or the input here would be fed into the model, and then the model would generate or predict an output, and then we will compare this output with the target value here. So if the target and the predicted value are same, it means the model is working fine. This would also generate a score depending on this results. So let's just go further and define this pipeline in order to train the model. So I'll just go back to the AI Fabric. And then we'll go under pipelines. And under pipeline, there is a possibility to generate different kind of pipelines. So let's just create and see what kind of pipelines could be created. So the first option that you need to select here is to select the kind of pipeline that you want. And here we have basically three options. So the first option that you see is a full pipeline run. This involves both training and evaluation within this pipeline. So it depends on how your data scientist has modeled your package. It could either happen that you could just create a full pipeline every time, or you can create two different pipelines, one for training and one for evaluation. So at this point, I want to just create two pipelines to show you how it works. And it would be similar in case of full pipeline as well. So let's just first create a training pipeline. And this training pipeline would be used to train our model using the training data set. So the model that I want to train is the English text classification. So let's select that. And since there is just one version, so you would have just one option over here. And now it is asking you to choose a data set. As you had already seen, we had defined a data set called train data, which contains all the training data to train this model. So once the training data has been added, the next option is that we need to run this model. And in order to run this model, there are three options. Either you can run it now, or you can select this, a time-based, wherein you can define a given time. And then there's a third option that's called recurring, wherein this can be used if you want to train data on a regular basis. So most of the time, recurring can be used in case of a trainable model. But for now, I would just run it now. And let's just click on create in order to run this model. And if you see here, there's another option that's called enable GPU. The benefit of using the GPU would be that the training of this model would be faster. But since I don't have it, it might take 1 to 2 hours in order to train this model. So let's just click on create. So one more thing that I want to add here is, so after this particular model would be trained, there would be a new version of this package that would be created. So if you know right now, we have the version of 1.0 that we are using in order to train this model. And right after training, there would be a new version called 1.1. And we would be using this trained version of this particular model in order to make an evaluation pipeline or the testing pipeline. So we need to wait for this pipeline to be successful or a new version to be created in order to create a testing pipeline. So by the time this model is being trained, let me just also show you how to create a full pipeline. And for that, it's the same thing. The only difference is that we'll be selecting the pipeline type as full pipeline run, and we'll be selecting the same package. And now if you see here, instead of just adding one data set, it is asking me for two data sets. So the first one is the input data set, which would be used to train the model. So let's just select the train data. And the second one is the evaluation data set, which would be used to test the model. So let's just select our test data. So again, you have an option to choose when you want to run this pipeline. And in this time, I would use the recurring one. And once you click here, you would see that there's a window that pops up where you can set up a schedule, and there are two options. So one is that you can set up the model using this window here, or if you have a complex schedule, then you can use the advanced option by setting up a Chrome job. I will just select Monday at, let's say, 9:22 and click on Done. And then click on Create. And if you see here, there's another pipeline that has been added, and the type is full and the status is scheduled. And if you go under Details, you would see all the things that you have been setting up here. Similarly, let's just go back. And now if you see here, the status of a package has changed from queued to running. So now the model is being trained using the train dataset. And after the training is complete, the status should change to successful. So let's just wait for that. So now, almost after 2 hours, the model has been trained and the status of the pipeline is successful. And if I go inside this pipeline, you would see a lot of outputs have been generated. And one of the output is also a zip file. So this zip file is the Python package, which is behind this trained model. And if you want, you can use this zip file to deploy a custom model. So in the next video, when we'll be deploying a custom model, we'll be using this zip file. And with that, we'll also see how to deploy a custom model. So for now, let's just go back to the pipelines. And at this stage, we'll create a new pipeline, which is the testing pipeline or the evaluation pipeline. So let's just click on Create New. And we'll select the evaluation run. And one more point here to remember is, after the training of a model, there is a new version that is being created, and you should be using this new version in order to run the evaluation pipeline. So the major version would still be 1, but if you see, there's a new minor version that is created, which is 1. So this minor version 1 is created after the training of the minor version 0. So I'll be selecting this one because we want to test the trained model. And now we need the evaluation test set here, so which is the test data. So once that's done, I'll just run it now. And this should take somewhere around 4 to 5 minutes. So if you see, the status has changed to queued, and after that it will be changed to running. And the output of this pipeline would be a score, and the score would be an indication of how good the model has been trained. And this score would light somewhere between 0 to 100, and more the score, the better the model has been trained. So let's just wait for 5 minutes for this model to be evaluated. So by the time this model is being evaluated, let's just go back inside the training pipeline and have a look at the results. So if you see in the results, there are certain artifacts. So let's just go inside. So let's just download the trained report. And this trained report contains all the information about how the model has been trained. And let's go back to our download folder and check this report. So let me just minimize this first. So the very first graph is nothing but a graph between the loss and the epochs. So loss is something that I'd already explained in the previous video. And the epochs that you see on the x-axis is the training cycles. So with every training cycle, the loss should reduce. And the blue line here is showing the training loss, whereas the yellow line is the validation loss. So if you see here, with every optimization cycle, the loss is being reducing. So initially in the first cycle, it was 0.7. And as you go on, the training loss keeps on reducing. But at the same time, the validation loss is increasing. So what happens with every training cycle is the model gets more and more accustomed to the training data. And there is a point where it goes more in the direction of overfitting. And in order to avoid overfitting, we need to find a point where the loss in the validation and training data are somewhere on the minimum. But in order to further understand how these models are really being trained, I would recommend that you do a crash course on machine learning. And there's a crash course available from Google, and I will just add the link in the description. So just go to it and try and understand how machine learning model works and how every model is being trained. So for now, let's just go back to the AI Fabric and see if the evaluation pipeline is completed. So it's still queued, so we need to wait till the time it starts running. But anyway, since it's still running, I would recommend that we deploy our trained model using the ML skills. So let's just go under ML skills and click on Create New. And we'll give this package as English text classifier trainable. And we'll choose the ML package. And the version, as you remember, we have to take the major version 1 and minor version also 1 and not 0. because this is the trained one. And if you want, you can give a description to the skill, and now just click on create. And with this, a new skill is being created in the AI fabric, and now it is being deployed to the orchestrator. So let's just wait for that. So let me just refresh. So if you now see here, the model has been deployed and is available. And if I go back to the orchestrator, it should also be available there. So going into the orchestrator, let's go down to the ML skills. And under ML skills, if you see, there is a new model that has been deployed by the name English Text Classifier Trainable. And at this point, I should be able to use this also in the UiPath Studio. So now let's just go into the UiPath Studio. And let's again open the AI fabric. And here at this point, if I click on the drop down, we see there's already a new skill that has been added. So let's just select this. And again, I would just leave the input as it is. And the response would be saved into the response variable. And then we'll be printing this response. So let's just run this file. And there should be a message box with the results. And the result is that the sentiment behind the text is negative, and the confidence score behind this prediction is 91%, which is a good score. So I'll just click on OK. So as I've already mentioned, that it could happen that the confidence score of your prediction is not good, maybe below 60%. And in such cases, maybe you want to include a human in the loop and have the robot make the prediction. And depending on the help from the human, you could just save this prediction in the CSV file and send this file back to the AI fabric. And every time a user is helping the robot in order to make a prediction, there would be a CSV file that would be created. And this CSV file would be then accumulated over a time. And maybe once in a month or once in 2 weeks, you can retrain the model depending on these data that is being sent back to the AI fabric. So let's see how we can do that. If you type just ML, under storage, you will find an activity that's called upload file. So let's just drag and drop it here. And you need to give certain inputs. So the first one is the project where you want to upload the file to. And in our case, it's out of the box trainable. And next is you need to give the data set. So if you remember, we had defined 2 data sets. The first one was train and the second was test. And we want to add this into the train data. So let's just add this here. And now it is also asking us the path into the data set. So this path is nothing but if you go back to the AI fabric, inside the data sets, the trained data, you could maybe create another folder. And if you want to create this folder, then you need to specify it here. So for example, if you want to create a folder structure, let's say datasets, trained data, and some date, and then your train.csv. So you could add date here as an input. But since I want to upload everything directly into the train data folder, I would not give anything here. And now let's just give the path of the local file that we want to upload. Since we have not created any file up till now, I would just use the train.csv file again to just show it how it works. So let's just use this. So once that's done, let's just go ahead and run this file. And as you can see, we are getting the message box with the result. And as a next step, this file would be uploaded into the AI fabric. So let's just click on OK. And it's getting uploaded. So now let's just go into the AI fabric. And I'll refresh this page. And if you see here at 351, a new file has been added. And the previous file, train.csv, got replaced. So what that means is, every time you make an upload with the same file name, then the previous file would be replaced. And as a next step, if you remember in the pipeline, we had an option to create a scheduled training pipeline, which will run every month or every week, depending on your requirement. And every time there's a new data, then there's a new model that would be created. And also, if you remember, we had started an evaluation pipeline, which is also successful now. And if you see here, there's also a score, which is 85%. So well, that's all for this video. And before I end this video, let me just do a small recap. So the first thing that we did was we added a trainable package, and then we created a data set. Thereafter, we created pipelines. So the first pipeline was to train the model, and thereafter we created a pipeline to evaluate the model. And after that, we also uploaded the trained model as an ML skill, which was then being used in the UiPath Studio. And thereafter in the UiPath Studio, we also saw how we can upload a file back into the AI Fabric in order to retrain this model. So that's all for this video. And in the next video, we'll see how to upload a custom model in the AI Fabric using a Python package. So just stay tuned and don't forget to like and subscribe my channel. Till then, keep automating.